So guys, Wilds Unknown has been out for a grand total of about 5 to 6 days at this point. Probably thousands of games have been played on the various online simulators. So I think enough time has passed for us to ponder and think about the topic for today's video. What cards from Wilds Unknown will make it into the Infinity format? But of course, when we talk about making it into a format, there are different extents to which a card can make their way in, right? So let's kind of break this down into a few different categories. The first would be the most headliner way that cards make it in, where they create a new archetype or a new synergy by themselves, by their addition into the format. The second category is that they become a synergy piece in an existing archetype where they build upon some of the synergies that are already present, therefore becoming quite quote-unquote important to those new archetypes. Thirdly, a card can make it into a format by being a high-rate role player in a certain ink color. So what that means is it may not necessarily be a part of a synergy, but the rate on the card is high enough such that any deck that's in that ink color would consider putting this card into their deck. So an example of this type of card tends to be removal, like Zeus, like Brawl. But let's say non-removal, a card that's high rate would be something like, say, Maui? Yeah, Maui's a good example. And the last way in which a card can make it into a metagame would be if it were a tech option that sees play only under certain circumstances. So as you can see, I've described them from like the highest stakes, highest payoff way a card can see play in the game all the way down to the lowest payoff, least frequently we will see a card in a certain metagame. But all of them still count as making it, especially in a format with as large a card pool and as powerful as Infinity. So before I run through the categories and go through my list, I do want to caveat that this video will only be talking about cards that I think can make it or have made it in this existing metagame. Of course, there are cards that are strong enough to see play if other stuff comes around that support it. A good example of this would be in Wilds Unknown, I would say Touch the Sky. Very, very high rate card. Unfortunately, the locations that are currently available are not good enough to support this card seeing play. But until the extra cards come around, these things are not really worth talking about. So not going to be discussing cards with high upside, high potential, but I don't think are currently good enough. So first category, cards that invent a new archetype. Are there any? Well, there are two contenders, both of which actually surprisingly slot into the same style of deck. Ruby Emerald combo. The two cards I'm talking about are of course Buzz Lightyear Jungle Ranger and Hercules Young Rescuer. Both the combos were actually discovered by the Forbidden Mountain during spoiler season for Wilds Unknown, so shout out to them. And for those not in the know, I'll give you the links to where you can find out how these combos work exactly. I'm not going to go into them because they're slightly complicated, but all you need to know is that they're both infinite combos that use the song Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo. Specifically for Buzz Lightyear, it combos with another card called Rama and Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo, and you need a third character in play in order to win the game. And for the Hercules combo, you need a Hercules in hand, a Megara that is able to sing and quest and challenge and so forth on the board, and either another Megara that's able to sing and quest and all that, or a Maui Half Shark that can just be played on the same turn. Oh, of course, and you need a Bibbidi Bobbidi Boo either in hand or in your discard. This card is fine for this particular combo because you can retrieve it with Hercules, and that's the infinite loop. See if you can figure it out without looking in the comments, but if you don't, the link's right there for you to figure it out. Point is, theoretically, these two new combos from the two new cards from Wilds Unknown form a new archetype, and theoretically they can also be played in the same deck. The question is it actually good enough to see play? And unfortunately, I think the answer is going to be no. Reason being, both of the combos take too much to set up. For the Buzz Lightyear combo, you need an active Rama on the board. Once the opponent sees a Rama, they know what's going on. They'll be in a position to remove it as fast as they can. And for the Hercules combo, well, it's slightly better because Megara has ward, so it's less likely to be harassed. But if you want to have the least things exposed, you need a Megara on board and you need 8 ink because you need to be able to play a Maui Half Shark and also play a Hercules in order to win the game. that's like way too much ink, and okay, Magara has ward, but your characters are also still exposed to be prepared anyway. So yeah, I think the setup for these two are just too high. And if you look at the stats on Duel's Ink, we can see this color combination of Ruby and Emerald not doing well because these combos are just not that good. So unfortunately, sorry, I don't think these are going to make it. But still cool that there is an infinite to have access to. Perhaps in the future where more pieces come along, maybe these will get there. Okay, swing and a miss so far. What about our second category? Synergy pieces in an existing archetype. I have two possible cards for you here that I've seen or that I've thought about. The first is one of the most hyped up cards from Wilds Unknown specifically for Core Constructed, Dale. So Dale looks like it slots into Amber Steel's song fairly well in Infinity. The deck already wants to play Ursula, it already wants to play Rapunzel, so having a 2 of a 3 of 4 drop that gives you potential value in a trade when you play it for a surprise, trade in, or to protect your singers or questers when they're singing or questing is fairly decent. I do have to say though, I don't think Dale is also even that good in Amber Steel Song. While it is capable of getting a value 2 for 1, should you play a surprise Dale and get a good value trade-in, that's pretty much all the upside there is to the card. It doesn't do anything else other than that when it comes into play, so if no good trade avail themselves, doesn't do much to play a 4-cost, let's say 4/4 quest for 2 Dale. It's weak to the same things that the rest of your deck is. It's weak to Sisu, Brawl, Under the Sea. It also gets banished by Zeus as a 4-drop, which by the way doesn't draw you a card when you play it, which is also not great. Essentially, it just doesn't net you that much value for 4 ink. Is it that much better than a, let's say, 4-cost 4/4 that gives all your other characters +2 strength? I don't think so, and I don't think that card would see play in Amber Steel Song. So maybe as a 2 of, but I don't think more than that. People are just trying it out now. I think it's going to get phased out of the deck pretty soon. The second possible card is Lenny, specifically in Lemon Lime discard decks. As you can see from its text, it's tailor-made to go into these. Lenny strips actions. Lenny gets to sing songs for free because he can unexert himself after the first song. It's a fairly decent value piece. Not the highest impact card. Compare Lenny to say like a real spectacular singer, for example, or Prince John is not going to live up to that extent. But you know, compared to something like Mowgli or Ursula, maybe, right? So not the highest impact card, definitely not a 4 off because 3 ink is fairly high, but still pretty good, maybe as a 2 or 3 off in Lemon Lime discard to give the deck one more piece to go off of. Maybe it can get off of playing Ursula Deceiver of All, for example, if it's still on those. Alright, third synergy piece that I think has promised to see play in Infinity is Diablo Stone Servant, specifically in Emerald Steel, essentially as a replacement to Morph. Morph is bad because it gets banished to Storm for free. Instead, you get to play this fella, which is a 1/3, doesn't get banished by Storm immediately, and you can shift a Diablo onto it, or in the event that you have a Prince John on the board, you can quest with it so that your Prince John can start questing as well. Also in Emerald Steel, you often end up in a position where your opponent has no cards, no board, but you take forever to win the game, right? Because you don't have that many characters that can quest. Your only 2 quester is Prince John actually, because you spend a lot of effort playing Diablo and Ursulas and stuff. And even Muses is also a 1 quester. But now with Diablo, if you have this Diablo and a Prince John on the board, your lore accelerates way faster than if you didn't have this card. So great synergy piece, shifts well, protects Prince John, just all around a good card for Emerald Steel. Another big synergy hit has been Buzzer's Arm, specifically in Emerald Sapphire items. So if you just look at this card, it's quite obvious that it's going to be good in the deck. For those who don't know, Emerald Sapphire items is a deck that just plays a crap ton of items, sometimes Oswald, sometimes not. Definitely Maurice's Workshop. Try and draw your whole deck and win the game with Lucky Dime and Tamatoa, of course, but your main board control option tends to be Under the Sea with Sapphire Coils, bolstered by a Fishbone Quill. And to control the lore, you play things like Ratigan's Marvelous Trap. For what it's worth, Emerald Sapphire items also got another Ratigan's Marvelous Trap in the form of Gyro Effect, but I don't think the deck needs 8 of this effect. So if you need like maybe 5 or 6, then you can go to this card as well. But let's not take away from the main thing, Buzzer's Arm, a shot in the arm for Emerald Sapphire items because it speeds up the deck by a lot. There was also a lot of talk about the Leviathan in Ruby Sapphire, and I get it, right? Any high cost uninkable character that looks like it banishes stuff that's in Ruby, obviously you want to try it out in RS, right? But unfortunately, I think this one's just not going to cut it because 10 ink is a crazy lot. I mean, as Ruby Sapphire, like there are games that I don't even get to 10 ink sometimes, you know? Secondly, in Ruby Sapphire specifically, the text on Leviathan is not that easy to trigger. Of course, you get popsicles, but you only get popsicles. You don't get Fortispheres in addition, for example. If you're forced to need to play something like a Develop Your Brain, then at that point you're looking at 11 ink rather than just plain 10 ink, which makes Leviathan extremely difficult to play. Also, Leviathan doesn't deal with one of the bigger problems of Ruby Sapphire, which is locations. And having a 10 ink uninkable card that doesn't outright win you the game, I don't think it's worth the slot. So I haven't been playing with it much in my Ruby Sapphire list, and I think most of the players online have also pretty much given up on this as a possible card because it's just too slow. It just doesn't work. Okay, so like so far for the previous category, let's now talk about the biggest one, surprisingly, high rate role players. So this is where I think Wilds Unknown is going to have some purchase in Infinity. In fact, 2 of the cards that are in my list actually have made a fairly big impact on the metagame already. The first is Merryweather. 4 costs, 4/5, quest for 1, ward. Almost as simple a Lorcana card as you can get. Why is this card so good? Because ward is just that good. It avoids all of the targeted removal in the format. Zeus, Bruno, Brawl, and something that goes to Brawl, Sapphire Coil even to go with your big Sisu. Merryweather's big enough to sing songs like Friends on the Other Side, like Zeus, and its size also threatens Ursula 2 from Singer decks or even Daisy Ducks. This unassuming 4/5 has been so impactful in the format, and to say specifically what Merryweather has done, the inclusion of Merryweather in Blurple has basically sealed the Blurple Steel Song matchup in Blurple's favor because it is a 4-drop that cannot be hit by removal like Zeus or by strength for tempo. And as a 4/5, because it threatens all of Steel Song singers and the rest of Blurple is already pretty good against Steel Song like Elsa, like ramping up into Hades, like into the Unknown to take out any possible bodyguards you might have to protect your questers. Matchups done and dusted. Steel Song's weak to Blurple, which honestly is what has opened the metagame right open at the start of the metagame for Wilds Unknown. For what it's worth, Merryweather is also seeing play in Blue Steel for pretty much the same reasons. 4/5, large character, can sing songs, also plays well with Ink Runner to threaten Diablos, kinda like in Core Constructed that we saw with Scuttle and Ink Runner in, you know, your Amber Sapphire and your Blue Steel decks. The second very high impact role player is a unassuming little bugger that I've had my eye on since the start of the spoiler season, and it is Jebediah Farnsworth. 2 costs, 3/3, evasive, reckless. What else could you want? It's all you need. So the role that this fella plays essentially is to check Diablo in Ruby Amethyst decks on turn 2 while not being an embarrassing play against other Amber aggro decks. If you think about it, even on the draw, if you play a Jebediah on turn 2 against a turn 1 Diablo from the opponent, it's pretty much fast enough to stop a Diablo from turning again on turn 3, unless of course they've played 2 other characters and sync strength if they are Emerald Steel, but you know, needing them to have all of these pieces is already a big improvement. They don't always have it, so having Jebediah is great. In my opinion, Jebediah alone has basically revitalized Ruby Amethyst control as a deck, because Ruby Amethyst has always had a problem dealing with an early Diablo, especially on the draw. And because it is not a one deck tech piece, it's also decent into your Amber Emerald Snowfort aggro decks, it's decent into Steel Song, it's also inkable, so end of the day, just a great card, fantastic. It's just amazing how a few keywords can make a card that impactful, and having unlocked Ruby Amethyst, it opened up the format way more in the same way that Merryweather did by unlocking Blurple essentially against Steel Song. The next role player I want to talk about is Firefly Swarm. Obviously, this card's going to make it into Infinity. I mean, Brawl sees play. This fella's gonna see play as well because of its ability to potentially be a 3-cost Dragonfire, assuming you have some popsicles lying around. Of course, being uninkable is a very big downside in a deck that's already aiming to play a very high number of uninkables. Of course, I'm talking about Ruby Sapphire, obviously. But I've played with the card and it's pretty good. So if you can spare the slots, this is something to consider, especially in conjunction with Maui Half Shark if that's the type of Ruby Sapphire deck that you're looking to play, because returning this fella to your hand as a removal action is pretty good. Two more role players that I think can see play or perhaps are already seeing play in the Amber Emerald Snowfort deck are Rex and Ham. Both of them go well with the deck's general plan of flooding the board with characters that get eventually buffed by Snowfort. And specifically for Rex, it can trade if you need to trade, but also the fact that it gains you a lore, puts you closer to winning. Great effect, acting as a bodyguard to protect your characters that subsidize costs, like your Grandmother Willow, for example. Ham, for the same reason you play with Grandmother Willow, because you then get a lot of subsidizing effects that go well together to play larger characters, such as your Lady Miss Park Avenues to return stuff back to your hand without needing to shift, so that you keep your character to again maximize use of the Snow Fort. Both these cards look pretty decent. Rex more than Ham, but maybe Ham will stick around as well. And the last two role players that I've seen being played in a purple steel aggro deck is Will-O-the-Wisp as well as Dash Par. So I'll talk about them one by one. Will-O-the-Wisp is just another Diablo, essentially a 1-cost character that can quest, puts pressure on your opponent to play something on 1 or turn 2 without setting you back a card when this fella gets returned to your hand. Will-O-the-Wisp has an additional advantage over Diablo by not being able to be banished by Ruby Amethyst 1-drops in Shunnerbox Followers and Magic Broom, so that's extremely fantastic because it might net you 1 more lore. And Dash Par is just a gathering knowledge of wisdom on a stick that happens to combo with Madam Mim. So over 2 turns you can get 4 lore from these 2 cards. It's pretty good. Alright, so that's it for role players. Now we move on very quickly to the last category, tech cards for specific situations. I think there are 0 from this set. I had high hopes for 1, Escape Plan, because I thought that this card would be Blue Steel's way of being able to combat ward characters like Muses and Prince John, which is historically Blue Steel's weakness. Now, Escape Plan's pretty good with Blue Steel because you get to trigger the ability quite easily with Fortispheres and Popsicle in the format, but unfortunately having played with the card, Escape Plan just sucks because the effect is symmetrical. You lose your own board in the process as well, and if your opponent has 3 characters on the board, you don't even necessarily get to remove the 2 things you want to remove. Even if you do remove everything, you reset the board like a Be Prepared, but your opponent gets the 2 ink first before you, so in a sense it's even less symmetrical because they get better benefit. Escape Plan's just bad. So yeah, no tech cards. I looked through the spoiler quite a few times, I couldn't see any. If you've noticed some, please feel free to flag them out to me in the comments below. Or for any of the other categories as well, if you think I missed out any cards that are worth discussing. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So that's it from me for this video. I'm very excited to talk about and play more Infinity. A lot of changes have taken place in the past week or so, and I'm sure more developments will come. So for those who are new and for those who are coming back, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you in the next one. Be sure to like and subscribe. Cheers!